The moon over the village was covered by thick, dark clouds, as if the sky itself didn't want to see what was happening behind Madam Azuka's hut. She wasn't cooking yet, she was whispering. You draw them from the north, she hissed softly. Pull them from the south. Even those who've eaten till they're full will feel an empty spot in their stomach that only I can feel. Adaugo, her young salesgirl, sat in the corner with her knees pulled up. She was only 16, but looked worn out, like she was 80. She watched as Madam Azuka pulled a small leather pouch from her bosom. More, Adaugo whispered, trembling a bit. The village school teacher, he came again today. Sold his bike to buy a second portion. His kids are walking around barefoot. Don't you think? Madam Azuka spun around, her eyes glowing with a strange, amber light. Don't think what, girl? You think I'm doing charity? The village mocked me when I was a poor widow. They looked down on my worn-out wrapper and spat. Now they come to my stall and bow. Now, they lick the wood of my benches. She grabbed an old, rusty spoon and pointed it at Adaugo. Your job is to serve. If you taste even a single grain of this rice, or tell anyone about the water in the clay pot, I'll cook your tongue and feed it to the dogs. Got it? Yes, Ma, Adaugo whimpered softly, her nose detecting the sharp metallic, coppery scent of the special ingredient Madam Azuka was now pouring carefully into the large, boiling clay pot atop the fire. Morning had broken with the first light filtering through the narrow cracks of the mud walls, but there was no peace in Motsi Okoro's compound. The air was thick with the sound of a woman's desperate weeping, mixing with the distant cawing of crows. Okoro, please. Neka cried, clutching her husband's faded, embroidered wrapper close to her chest. The baby has a high fever. We must buy medicine from the chemist shop in the next village. You took the last of the money from under the cracked, dusty mattress. Okoro, a man who once stood as the most solid pillar in the community, now looked gaunt and hollow, like a ghost of himself. His cheeks were sunken and hollow, etched with despair. Medicine. What is medicine compared to the strength I get from Madam Azuka's rice? When I eat it, I feel divine, like a king. When I don't, my blood seems to turn into cold water, draining from my veins, he muttered passionately. It's juju, Okoro. Can't you see? Neka screamed, her voice rising in panic. The entire village is under a dark spell. Even the village priest has abandoned the shrine. Instead, he stands in long lines at the bustling market square, waiting for his turn. Okoro, overwhelmed, shoved her aside with a frantic strength that was not truly his own. Keep your mouth shut, woman, he snarled. You're just jealous because your everyday soup tastes like ash. I saw the king's servant there yesterday, and the wealthy merchants from the distant city trading their precious goods. If it's good enough for royalty, then it's good enough for me. Without a backward glance, he sprinted out of the house, joining a procession of villagers, men and women walking in a matching, zombie-like gait, their eyes fixed on the distant horizon, uncaring of their crying children or the withering crops. The marketplace was a chaos, a theater of absurdity. At Madam Azuka's store, the long snaking queue stretched nearly a mile through the bustling dirt pathways. Sweat slicked the foreheads of the waiting crowd, anger and frustration simmered in their eyes. Move back, a woman, visibly pregnant, yelled fiercely, shoving her neighbor. I've been standing here since the first cockcrow at dawn. My money is just as good as yours. Your money's dirty, her neighbor shot back fiercely. I heard you sold your marriage bed to settle your debts at this store. Behind the counter, Adaugo walked tirelessly, moving quickly from scoop to serve to taking cash, her arms aching from the constant motion. Madam Azuka hovered behind her like a hawk, her sharp eyes constantly watching, her hand always resting lightly on the lid of the small, ominous black pot that sat separate from the others, heavy with unknown contents. Suddenly, a group of village elders approached, led by the king's prime minister, their faces stern and measured. The crowd parted respectfully as they advanced. Madam Azuka, the Prime Minister said smoothly, his voice oily with authority, the king is displeased. He sent for his lunch an hour ago, but his messengers returned empty-handed. He demands that the spice in the rice today be doubled in intensity. He has a guest, a noble duke from the coast, and he wishes to showcase the glory of the village with an unforgettable feast. Madam Azuka bowed low, a mock humility in her eyes. My lord, the king shall have the best. Adaugo. Pack the gold-rimmed bowls. Put the meat from the bottom of the pot, the tender parts. As Adaugo packed the food, she noticed something. A small, black beetle crawled out from under the lid of the pot. Madam Azuka didn't kill it. She whispered to it, and the beetle flew back into the rice. Adaugo felt a surge of nausea. She looked at the Prime Minister, wanting to scream, "Don't eat it. It's poison," but her throat felt as if it were filled with needles. Inside the royal palace, a feast was laid out. The king sat with his visitor, a man dressed in fine lace. You have never tasted anything like this, the king boasted, his eyes unfocused. My wives have stopped cooking. There is no point. This woman, Azuka, she has the touch of the ancestors. The duke took a spoonful. His eyes widened. My word, the flavor. It's like a memory of something I've lost. I want more. Why do I feel like I could eat the whole pot? That is the secret, the king laughed, though his laugh sounded like a dry rattle. One of the king's wives, Lolo Homa, watched from the shadows. She had been observing the village. She saw how the people were becoming thin while Madam Azuka's belly grew. She saw how the farms were overgrown with weeds because no one had the energy to walk, only the energy to wait for rice. My lord, Lolo Homa stepped forward. The village is dying. The treasury is empty because you are paying this woman in gold. Look at the people. They are fighting in the streets over a plate of food. The king slammed his fist on the table. Silence. You are just bitter because I no longer visit your quarters. This rice gives me visions. It gives me power. It gives you madness, she whispered, turning away. She knew she had to do something. She had to find the source. Days turned into weeks. The addiction grew. The quarrels in the village became violent. A man stabbed his brother over a piece of special meat from Madam Azuka's pot. The village was on the brink of civil war. One night, Lolo Homa crept into the market. She found Adaugo crying by the well. Child, the queen said, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. What is in the pot? Tell me, and I will protect you. Adaugo shook her head frantically. I can't. She'll cook my soul. She uses the water from the clay pot, she washes her feet in it before she boils the rice. And the bundle, the red bundle at the bottom. What bundle? It's a heart, Adaugo whispered, the words finally breaking free. A heart of a child who died without a name. She feeds the rice with grief, and the grief makes the people hungry for more. Lolo Homa gasped. We must expose her tomorrow. When the sun is at its peak. The next day, the market was more crowded than ever. Madam Azuka was at her peak. She was wearing a crown of gold coins. Step up. Step up, she cried. The rice is hot. The rice is life. Just as the king's guards arrived to take the royal portion, Lolo Homa marched into the center of the square. Stop, she cried. The crowd grumbled. Move out of the way, Lolo. We are hungry. Hungry for what? Lolo Homa shouted. Hungry for filth. Adaugo, come forward. Adaugo stepped out, holding the black pot. Madam Azuka's face turned the color of ash. Girl, get back to work. Don't listen to this jealous woman. Show them, Adaugo, the queen commanded. Madam Azuka lunged for the pot, but the king's guards, spurred by Lolo's authority, held her back. Madam Azuka began to scream in a language that sounded like 1,000 crows. Adaugo took a flask of holy water given to her by the queen and poured it into the massive cauldron. Suddenly, the steam turned from white to a sickly, neon green. The aroma of spices vanished, replaced by a smell so foul that people began to collapse. The rice inside the pot began to boil over, but it wasn't rice anymore. It was a mountain of maggots, human teeth, and shards of bone. The special meat surfaced. It was nothing but toads and rotten lizard skins, enchanted to look like beef. The crowd went deathly silent. Motsi Okoro looked at the spoonful in his hand. He saw the maggot wriggling against his thumb. He let out a primal scream and began to vomit, a black sludge pouring out of him. "You witch," the Prime Minister roared, realizing he had been eating filth for months. Madam Azuka didn't plead. She laughed. A horrible, screeching laugh. "You all ate it. You loved it. You sold your children for it. The filth isn't in my pot, it's in your heart." As the villagers charged forward with sticks and stones, Madam Azuka's body began to dissolve. She turned into a swarm of black flies that flew into the forest, leaving behind only her gold and the stench of her sins.
Wow, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. Mama Azuka didn't just sell rice, she sold a soul-crushing addiction. Do you think Madam Azuka is really gone, or is she setting up shop in another village? If you want to see a prequel about how Madam Azuka got her powers from the forest, let's get this video to 5,000 likes. Don't forget to share this with your family group chat. Remind them to be cautious about where they eat this weekend. Drop your comments below. I'll be replying to the best ones, if you want more chilling African tales. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, share this video with that one friend who loves eating out too much.